Hi, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world and where you are watching this. Welcome to EduMont, the edge you want. My name is Rohan Chopra. I'm a CPA, a CMA, and your lead faculty here at EduMont. Welcome to our mega debate on decoding US CPA 2024 with the key stakeholders from AICPA, NASBA, UWorld, CPA Eligible, and EduMont, yours truly. Joining us live today from New Jersey, we have Mr. Joseph Maslott. Joseph, please do let me know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. He is the Associate Director of Examinations from AICPA, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Joseph, would you like to say hi?
Hi, thanks for having me, and perfect pronunciation. Thank you.
Thank you. I was worried about that. Next up, we have Kyle Barrier from Nashville. Am I right to that, Kyle? Are you at Nashville right now?
Yes, correct.
Awesome. Kyle Barrier is the Associate Director at NASBA, the National Association of the State Boards of Accounting, which is a central body in charge of governing the CPA admission and application process. Joining us from Singapore, we have Mr. Shubir Khattu, who is the Senior Director of Business Development from UWorld, whose study materials you ought to be studying if you are preparing for CPA. Shubir, would you like to say hi?
Hi, Rohan. Hi, everybody. Great to spend this session with you all. Greetings from Singapore.
Awesome to have you all here. Excellent. And last but not least, we have Christopher McGrath. He's from CPA Eligible, but he's more commonly known as Chris Bhaiya here at EduMont because that's what our common students call him. By the way, Chris, I don't know if you know this, but you've got a special name here. That's because, and by the way, Bhaiya is a term we use as affection for an elder brother. And the reason we do that is because nobody can make a single move without having an exact SB advice from you first. Would you like to say hi?
Hey, everyone. Really happy to be here.
Excellent. Now, I will be moderating today's event, and we'll be asking our guests specific questions, which are common questions that our students have been asking us for a while now. And to begin, we'll start to talk about what's changed, what's new. So I'd like to start off with my questions, which I have right here in this tab. Firstly, I'd like to ask the question from Mr. Joseph. Sir, what is the goal or the objective of the new CPA evolution model?
Great question. So CPA evolution is really an acknowledgement that new rules, regulations, accounting standards, and technology have changed what new CPAs need to know and do. And if you think about the CPA exam, and if you know the CPA exam history, since 1917, there's been 4 or 5 sections that all candidates must take for US licensure or a CPA. And this CPA evolution model is really changing that in the fact that candidates now have a little bit more choice. So all candidates will still take 3 core exam sections covering audit and attestation, financial accounting and reporting, taxation and regulation. Those are the core sections. All candidates must test that. But to complete the exam requirement for licensure, you have a choice on the 4th section. So as we all know, BEC is going away. And kind of in place of BEC, you have a choice of one of 3 discipline sections: information systems and controls, tax compliance and planning, business analysis and reporting. So if you're really going down the audit path, I think a lot of candidates are considering business analysis and reporting, which really focuses on higher order concepts in financial accounting. Also has accounting for state and local governments within US jurisdictions. Obviously, those going down a tax path would consider tax compliance and planning. Some of the new content in that section are personal planning, with a natural extension of what a CPA does in the accounting or completing tax returns for individuals. So saving for college, retirement planning, bunching of income deductions. It's really a new area, and that's in the tax compliance and planning discipline. So that's exciting. And then the most brand new section, information systems and controls, is really for those interested in IT audit, SOC engagements, working on SOC engagements, cybersecurity, and associated risk management with that. So that's the most brand new section. I think most candidates, as some of the surveys that we've done, are probably leaning toward business analysis and reporting, and then followed by tax compliance and planning. And those are more of the traditional CPA areas of practice, with information systems and controls really coming up and really being a new area of service as far as CPAs go. So with the proliferation of data stored in clouds, there are an increasing demand on kind of that assurance and controls around that, and that's where CPAs come in. That's a really exciting area, and certainly a way to set yourself apart.
Hey, that's awesome. Thank you so much for giving us what is the objective, the goal. In short terms, could I just say the objective is to get you to be more ready for the real world out there? Is that right? Yeah. That's what it is. Okay, Kyle, I hope you were enjoying that cup of joe. But with that being said, I've got a question for you. Speaking of specializations, since we just discussed that shortly ago, I'd like to find out if the testing is expected to start anytime soon, and are there any specific windows that need to be considered when you're planning for getting your testing window or getting your testing date for a specialization?
So yes, it is changing a bit going into 2024. So actually after December 15th, there will be no testing until January 10th. And that's when the new evolution kicks off. So on January 10th, you'll have to pay attention, and we have graphics out there. I'm sure EduMont has them and we'll prep you on that. But the windows are smaller, especially for the disciplines. There's only a certain amount of time where you can take those. And so if you're planning to do that, please plan accordingly, work on a plan. The scores will actually take a little longer. The psychometricians will be going through that data, take a little longer to get the scores back as well. So please plan, because the windows, it won't be continuous testing immediately. You'll have to plan on those windows for what sections you want.
And Kyle, just to add a note to that, there isn't a particular order these students should be following for these sections, is there? It's really their personal preference going into this. I know you and I talked in Nashville on Monday about, maybe looking at the new disciplines first and getting a sense, whether the one that you choose is the right one. But in reality, this is what you think is going to be best for you as far as what test parts and when you're taking, what test parts you're taking and when you're taking.
Yeah, exactly. Right? There's no one size fits all approach. It's personal preference, what works best for you and your study method. Maybe you want to go for the ones that you believe are harder first, or the easier ones first, according to how knowledgeable you are on certain subjects. So personal preference for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, Shubir, I've got a question for you, because we're talking about what's new, right? So we've spoken about the fact that the CPA evolution is new, and we've spoken about its goal, its objective. We've spoken about the fact that the specialization is now going to be tested in specific windows, and there is no specific order for it. You can choose whichever specialization you think is appropriate for you, and you can choose whichever exam is appropriate for you and take it as you want to. It's up to you, is the point. So that being said, Shubir, I've got a question for you as well. How excited are you to have Peter Olinto join in the UWorld team? And when can we start to see some videos, some lectures from him in the study material?
So Peter's really a legend, and we're really very excited to have Peter as part of our core team of instructors and content development experts. He's actually already featured in our 2024 CPA content along with Roger Phillip. So you can actually expect to see him in our 2024 materials right away. In fact, we brought him over to UWorld when we were starting to develop our full development of the CPA Evolution product. And we wanted to ensure that he was integral in the development of that product. We know how much students in India have enjoyed Peter Olinto's videos and lectures over the last few years. And students at EduMont will greatly benefit from the same. The energy that he brings to his videos, the online sessions he will eventually conduct for partners, and his creation of content is highly valued by students. In the future, EduMont students can look forward to specialized online sessions from Peter Olinto and our star expert faculty as well.
Yeah, wonderful, excellent. Chris, I've got a question for you as well, although it's not entirely related to what we've asked Shubir, but it is relevant to the fact that we're talking about what's new, what's changed. Given the new system,
Yeah.
Chris, what is the biggest challenge Indian students face when they apply for their exams, when they apply for their eligibilities?
Yeah, I think you know, the new portal is amazing in comparison to, you know, the different types of systems that were being used in the past. It's more of a harmonized system, and while the evaluation system is still separate, everything else is now harmonized. So when it comes to accessing information, especially on the back end for NASBA, it's just remarkably a lot easier to track and report on and access data. So we should see, you know, a greater turnaround of support and just better access to information throughout the process. But what do I think the biggest challenge is? I think the biggest challenge is just getting your expectations on timelines ahead of time. You know, being very clear on that this isn't going to happen overnight. Understand that, you know, the exam and licensure are two different components, but both equally important. And really just to, you know, be prepared. I mean, preparedness is going to be the #1 key here, and probably the biggest challenge, both from an expectation standpoint and from you know, a material standpoint.
Correct.
So I think that's probably the best answer.
It's about managing your expectations and making sure that you're compliant with the process. And it is not a short process. So we've got to be prepared for every step that we might be required.
I'll just add one last point to that, Rohan.
Yeah.
The benefit of being with EduMont is that we are here by your side. You know, I'm your direct support rep for all US CPA exam eligibility licensure questions, but Kyle is an extension of that. So you always have that peace of mind and the support that if you know, there's a credit shy here or there, we're gonna be there by your side, making sure that the pathway forward is clear and it's the path of least resistance.
Correct. Thank you so much for that. That is genuinely a very valuable service, and that's what's earned you your nickname, because you know you've always come through for us, and I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. That being said, we also want to ask a question about the 30-month extension policy, and who's better to ask this question from than Kyle himself? Kyle, would you let us know what is the new 30-month extension policy, and when is it expected to be implemented?
Yes, that is a very popular question, as rightfully so. And so what's happened is back last spring, NASBA put in the UAA, which is the Uniform Accountancy Act, which is the guide that we encourage all of the boards of accountancy to adopt and follow. So since that's happened, there have been a handful that have it in their legislation now. It's been voted on, it's been passed, and it's been in rule. Not very high with international volume because those states have like a social security number requirement, things like that.
Yeah.
I've learned that many of the jurisdictions have voted yes on the 30 months, and it's just going through the legislation process now. Washington, and Chris, since I saw you on Monday and I showed you this map, Washington is now approved it because I talked to a member of their staff yesterday. So they are at 36 months. Washington, it's in their rule. If you pass the CPA exam section today as a Washington candidate, that score is valid for 36 months for you to pass the remaining 3 sections.
That's awesome. That's even more time than 30 months. So that's even worth more than the hype. Right.
I mean, Washington is the outlier. They decided to go to 36 months versus 30. But all the other boards, like Alaska, Montana, Guam, Pennsylvania, ones that you might be a little more familiar with, have voted to go to 30 months. It's not in place yet. It has to go through the legislation to be in the rules, but it's on that pathway. And
at least they voted for it, which is a good thing, which means it's about to happen. Whenever it does, it's bound to happen, is the point.
Kyle, that applies to people who've taken the test in the last year too, doesn't it?
No, that does not. So that would be something different. I don't think, and I don't have the data on that, but I don't think they're going retroactive. So
They won't.
There,
Okay.
there have been talks about that, but I don't want to speak about any relief initiatives. So I would not count on that at all. I would just look at going forward. So like right now going forward, we know Washington is at 36 months for that conditional exam section credit.
And all other states, we have to wait until likely 2024 for them to implement those changes officially.
Yeah. Some point in 2024, it should get through that legislation process. That area I'm not as keen on. I don't know all the hoops for that, but it will get there.
Understood.
The point that I note in this is that it's not going to be retroactive or retrospective. It's going to be for the next generation of people who are passing the exams, not for those who've already passed one, right? Or not for the credits that you've already passed, essentially. Is that correct, though?
So there may be an initiative out there that varies on board to board, but I haven't heard of anything. So I don't want to give any definite concrete information. What we know right now is that going forward, for those boards that voted on it, it will soon be 30 months. And then Washington already has voted, yes, it is 36 months. I think the other states that are currently at 30 months that's already in their rules are like Utah, Puerto Rico, not high international volumes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That sounds fair. With that being said, Shubir, I've got a question for you, and that's the last of this segment. Then we'll move on to the next one. For this segment, the last question that I want to talk about is, are students expected to choose a specialization in advance before ordering in their study materials? How does this work?
So with us, for example, if you have one of our premier courses, as a standard, we'll include bar in it, but students have some time to notify us of the change of their discipline. So it's typically a month period, but if they don't, we can look at extensions. Automatically, when students sort of log in and select the course, bar will just come as sort of standard. But again, for us, we have a certain set recommendation, but again, like it was previously mentioned, everybody can decide what their specialization, what their discipline they want to take, and the order in which they want to do the subjects as well. Sometimes with y'all, for example, it would follow what the training partner does, and how you teach your classroom sessions. We have certain recommendations in terms of our core subjects leading into the discipline, and so therefore which order you should sort of look at taking. But like it was said earlier, it's really an individual decision, or whichever school you sort of follow. But students won't be left in lurch. They will get their chosen discipline when they get the UL materials.
Excellent, excellent. I think the answer generally here is that we'll start you off with BAR, that's the standard. But if you do feel the need that you want to change it, you can let us know, we'll change it over for you. And ideally, that should happen in a period of 30 days from joining in. Is that fair? Does that sound fair?
That's correct, and we'll always make exceptions for you and your students, Rohan.
Thank you so much. With that being said, I think we've covered what's new, what's changed. Now let's actually begin talking about CPA in India. And for that, I'd like to start off with Mr. Joseph right there. Sir, what are the benefits of pursuing US CPA while you're working in India?
That's a great question. I think there are a lot of benefits to pursuing a US CPA license for those working in India. Certainly, outsourcing of accounting, finance, taxation functions will continue. That is absolutely going to happen. So there's a lot of demand for those with knowledge and skills of US accounting, auditing, taxation, IT frameworks in India. It certainly gives folks a competitive edge when applying for jobs and showing potential employers that you have the background in US GAAP, US GAS, IT standards, IT frameworks, taxation. So I really can't stress enough the benefits of that, including the prestige and respect that comes with obtaining one of the premier licenses in accounting throughout the world.
Yeah, gotta agree. And we have a lot of foreign companies from the US, companies from around the world that open up offices in India, have back-end offices in India. And, I've discussed this plenty of times in my own webinar as well on Saturdays. I talk about it. So there's actually massive scope for CPAs in India. And the common perception still remains that this is a foreign qualification. But I think the way it is being used in India, it's becoming a household name pretty soon. And we'll get there eventually in a short period of time, I hope. With that being said, I've got a question now for Chris. Chris, what is the bare minimum documents that somebody needs to have, just the bare minimum, to start their CPA evaluation process from India, of course?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, you want a Bachelor of Commerce degree, ideally specialized in accounting. That degree itself will usually be enough to get you into specific states. But generally speaking, you want an equivalent 4-year US degree, 120 credits, 8 upper level accounting courses. And within those 8, at least 1 upper level. And when I mean upper level, non-introductory. So usually nothing taken in the first or the second year or first and second semester, although there are exceptions. Generally, you'll need 1 upper level finance, 1 upper level auditing, 1 upper level tax, and 1 upper level cost management. In addition to that, 8 business courses. If you have those 3 elements, 120 US credits, 8 upper level accounting courses, 8 business courses, you are going to be good to go on the exam. When it comes to licensure, those requirements change. Sometimes you need more accounting depending on the state. All of the states will require you to get 150 total credits, which is 5 years, 6 years in some cases, worth of education. Of course, because we've been doing this a long time, there are ways to sit for the exam. For example, in Guam, if you're a little bit short, but you show us that you've registered for a postgraduate diploma degree, like AIMA, for example. If you show Guam through what's called a certificate of enrollment that you registered for those courses, they will let you sit right away, right? Provided that you finish that that coursework in a certain period of time. I believe it's 18 months.
It's 18 months from the day to pass the first exam.
But generally speaking, if you have enough accounting or finance, and finance is another one that we can kind of sneak you in another state, we can get you in to sit for the exam. But everyone on this call should be aware, to get licensed, right? Which is this is the goal. You will need at least 8 upper level accounting courses.
And 150 credits.
And 150 credits.
Absolutely.
Get in about the 18 months. Guam is pretty unique in which they allow that. The only jurisdiction by far that gives that much time with those planned or in progress courses. And that 18 months starts on the day of their first exam. So pretty generous with that time frame. So yeah, Chris, otherwise pretty spot on with that stuff. I know we worked a lot on helping your candidates in the past, and so I think you've been pretty accustomed to a lot of the requirements.
Right. Thank you, both of you. Okay, with that being said, Kyle, I was about to come to you with a question. What are the alternatives to a transcript for an international student? Let's say somebody doesn't have a transcript or can't access one. What is a possible alternative for us?
So what I most commonly see, and it doesn't matter if it's a consolidated transcript, if it's annual or semester-wise mark sheets, whatever they have, they can get it attested by their registrar or controller of exams. And then that school puts it in that university sealed envelope and it gets forwarded on to my department. Outside of that, I mean, there are some alternatives, like obviously email. If they can get the school to email, we'll accept email too. But we do have an education verification service where they can just email us scanned copies of their original documents. And it's not a fast process, and it does cost an extra fee. So that's not always the first thing I encourage people to do. But if you're really having problems, we have either an employee of mine that can get in contact with the school, or a third-party company we use that can get in contact and get those verified. Or we've also accepted like a third-party service like TrueCopy that can help work with the school to get documents released. So we try to give a few different ways, whether it's mail, email, working with TrueCopy, purchasing our education verification service. Those are the 4 big avenues to get those documents issued.
But if you were to put it in order based on preference, if you were to put it in order based on preference, NASBA's preference is first to have your university email copies of your transcripts directly to NIES. That is the most preferred, the lowest cost. I don't believe we charge anything for that, right?
Unless the school charges them, but NASBA won't charge usually anything. That's the email to us or the mail by courier are our top 2 preferences that we would like to see. But ultimately, the remaining 2 I talked about are there if you need them to try to get those documents to us, because part of our candidates are the students, but it's also the boards of accounts, and we have to make sure documents are coming authentically and do our due diligence on that end as well.
And education verification, everyone, is a fantastic service. We've sent several candidates who have been, in tough spots. They haven't been able to reach their, especially during COVID, right? When they weren't able to reach their universities, we would put them through to education verification, and they would be able to get NASBA to validate it for them. There is an additional cost of $200 USD per institution. So we do everything that we can to make sure that either university emails them to NIES, or that we can get sealed, unopened copies of your transcripts mailed to NIES and NASBA in Nashville before pursuing that option, although it is a nice redundancy to have just in case.
Right. So if I get this right, number 1, we prefer if you have your transcripts emailed to us. If that doesn't work out, you can send them via mail, by which we mean, physical mail, like a courier service.
And I want to be very clear, it's the university itself.
Yes.
Your university sending it directly to NIES. If it's the candidate, for emails, it doesn't have to be. It's just they're just sending a digital copy. If it's hard copy, then absolutely it needs to be sealed. But usually the university would send that to the student first, and then the student would send that to NIES. But certainly primary is digital from the university to NIES direct.
Right. Okay. I think that gives us some clarity. And again, if both these methods don't work out because you can't get your university, they send an email, or you don't have a copy of the transcripts that can be sent via courier, then in that case you should then opt for the education evaluation, in which case you can pay $200 per institution. But in that situation, you save yourself the hassle of having to travel to your university and get the transcripts or request any of that from the university, especially for those who are having troubles with getting the work done from their admin offices of their universities. I understand that is somewhat of a challenge for some people here in India. Again, most of you would have access to your university, easy access, and you would be in a position to just get an email, which, like Chris said, is free. You don't have to pay anything for it. That's the good thing.
And Rohan, I'll just make one last comment here. We know how expensive the process of becoming a US CPA can be, right? And so Rohan, myself, Kyle, we're always trying to make sure that if there are costs that can be avoided, we will avoid them, right? Like it is always top of mind because we've been supporting India students for decades. So just make sure you guys are aware of that.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Because $200 is 200 currency units for you. For us, it's like
I know.
that's just how it is, right? Okay. With that being said, The next question I have is for Shubir, and it's a sensitive question. Audiences in India, like you were just talking about, Chris, are price sensitive. You know, they care a lot about the price. And with that being said, there are a lot of local or pirated versions of study materials that are available in India and at a fraction of the cost. Why should a student not go with a pirated copy or a locally produced version?
Sure. I mean, that's a fair question and a good question. But I would always tell people you're investing in your career, spending your time, and ideally you would like to pass at the first attempt. We have a 94% pass rate with people using our product, and this enables you to keep your goals, your careers, your aspirations on track. There's been significant change to the syllabus, and not all products out there, whether it's local or otherwise, have undertaken the investments we at UWorld have. It's important for us to ensure that we rebuilt our product from scratch, and we really did that. We didn't enhance the existing product. We just went back to the drawing board and aligned itself perfectly to the AICPA blueprint, just to make sure students are exam ready. It's a time-tested product from Wiley and Roger, and that's reflected in our quality and success for many years. And it shows in our pass rates. But again, in terms of pirated materials, look, all of y'all are entering the world of finance and accounting, and that itself should make you have a strong moral compass and code of ethics. That's just the nature of the profession as well. So if students don't value IP, advancement in a collective world of in our chosen professions in the finance and accounting world stops as well. We destroy creativity, we destroy entrepreneurship as well. Eventually, students won't have access to quality of products because they won't exist for them to buy pirated materials, because content creators won't see a business opportunity in creating and updating their materials if everybody's just buying pirated materials. In your career, even for people, aspiring, potential CPA candidates, you might develop systems, solutions, and content. Where is your IP in the future? And if you're unable to monetize it, the creation of that stops as well. So in my view, piracy and advancement, it really stops the advancement of humankind in general and in our chosen professions. So say no to piracy, all.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Say no to piracy.
With regards to piracy, with all the changes of CPA evolution, none of the pirated material is going to have the updates. All of these updates are brand new. So even if you are going to choose some bootleg version, it will not be applicable anymore because of CPA evolution. And I think from a piracy standpoint, that is by far the most important thing to take away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wanted to just add into this statement, like Shubir started off by saying, anybody who's wanted to become a CPA wants to be one in the first attempt. And the money that you would save buying pirated versus, buying an original official AICPA approved material would be marginal in comparison to the money you'd lose if you fail even one single exam. So it's something to think about for everybody. Okay, with that being said, Kyle, I've got a last question from this segment before we move on to our last one where we talk about the future. This particular segment, this particular question is the last one. I just want to quickly ask you, which Indian IDs are acceptable, if any, if somebody does not have a passport?
So the passport is required for an international test center. They will need the passport. Now, as far as getting started in the process, if let's say they've applied with the government for the passport and they don't have it quite yet, they can apply to my service for the international evaluation report with their I might not say this correctly, the Aadhaar card, or any government issued ID, just so we can see and make sure that this person is who the education links with. But once they are getting the NTS issued and want to go to the Prometric Test Center and take the exam, they will have to have that passport to get into the test center in India. And keep in mind, this is very important, the name on the passport must match the name on the NTS exactly, for the first name and last name.
Absolutely. Okay, fair enough. So the idea is you can start off your process, but at the end of the day, when you do go to the exam center, you will need a passport. So it's not really something you can do away with. Everybody needs a passport. That's the idea. That's fair enough. It just gives us enough breathing room, maybe, because sometimes it can take time to apply and get your passport. So
Exactly.
there's breathing room. That's a good thing. Okay, with that, we've covered a lot about, CPA in India specifically. Starting off with what is the scope? Why should somebody do it? Which was answered by Joseph. And then we talked about what are the bare minimum requirements. What do you need to start your process? What are your alternatives to transcripts? Why should you not buy pirated, which is a seemingly Indian trend? And also, what kind of IDs are needed to actually, uh, finish the process of applying, which is a passport at the end of the day. With that being said, let's now talk about what the future looks like. And speaking of which, I'd like to start off with Joseph right there. The last question for you, not the last question, sorry, this is the second last question. I'm going to ask you one more after this. This is your second last question. The question says, which CPA exam discipline section should we take, or which specialization should we choose, and what should we base our decision on?
Great question. Great question. No matter what path you choose, what discipline section, you pass the 4 sections, you are a CPA. But that being said, disciplines are designed to give a candidate more flexibility to align with what you're interested in, perhaps today, or what you feel more comfortable in. As I started to mention before, those interested in an audit and attestation path, you can certainly consider business analysis and reporting, which really goes over some more concepts in depth of financial accounting and reporting that would be useful for those going into an audit or financial accounting space. Obviously, those going down a tax route, I think tax compliance and planning makes a lot of sense. And certainly if you're looking to set yourself apart, or if you're working really in an IT audit or working in SOC engagements or cybersecurity, the information systems and controls discipline would really be interesting. Now, the best place to go to consider those disciplines is certainly the blueprints, which candidates are pointed to. They outline the section, not only the content, skills, and representative tasks of each of the exam sections, but also has a nice section intro that kind of outlines the section. It's a good read. It's a short read. I would consider that when looking at the disciplines. But I can't stress enough that no matter what path, whatever discipline you end up passing, still leads to CPA.
Yeah, that it does. And I think that's excellent in the advice that you've given us. It should be based on what your interest is, what your chosen field is. If you feel you're a tax professional at heart, you should go with TCP. And if you feel you're more interested in accounting and business, then you should choose BAR, for example. I think that makes perfect sense. I hope our audience also agrees with that. With that being said, Shubir, speaking of the future, when a student does start the journey, they have to select a study material. Sorry for that stutter right there. They have to select a study material. Why should a student choose the UWorld study material over everything else in the market?
Same reason, Rohan, you've aligned yourselves with us and our materials, but I respect all study materials out there, so I can just speak for UWorld. Over the course of the years, we've helped 2 million students prepare for high-stake exams, across accounting, finance, admissions, medical, and other fields. And it's really the coming together of 2 leading materials, Wiley and Roger, that's come into this one industry-leading UWorld product now. And alone, Wiley and Roger were already great, best-in-class products, but combined, we're pretty confident. It's not going to be replicated very easily by people in the market. We've got a 94% pass rate if they follow the plan and they're attaining the metrics as they continue their studies in the system. And this is benchmarked against people who've used our products and passed the exam. So really, if you sort of, look at existing students who've done it, and you're following that plan in the system, that's the potential, pass rate that we have in place. And this is even without the great lectures you will have from EduMont and Mr. Rohan Chopra himself. But we've really completely rewritten the 2024 product from scratch. We started from a clean slate. We rebuilt the products, combining the best features and content from Wiley and Roger, and just to really make sure it's aligned, with the blueprint. And like we were talking about earlier, the pirated materials just aren't going to give you that. They're going to take a lot of time to catch up and plagiarize from sort of everybody else. But we have really great features. So it's award-winning explanations with vivid illustrations, and that really improves comprehension and retention. We've got engaging lectures, it breaks down difficult topics and brings concepts to life. We'll have sort of star faculty like Peter Linto coming and doing sessions for you all as well. You will find clear indications of the skill level and representative tasks laid out in the AICPA blueprint. We've got dynamic study planners, which will outline what you need to study and for how much time. But really, one of the key features is our smart path, which provides data-supported targets to keep you on track and when you are exam ready. Most CPA review courses sort of focus on, we've got the most number of questions, but data shows that this is not the most effective approach. Using SmartPath, mines user data to guide CPA candidates on where and how to spend their efforts. And the ultimate result is more efficient study sessions, less wasted time. So, I could go on, but these are just some of the reasons why, students should use UWorld and in conjunction with EduMont, so they have the best blended learning solution out there in the market.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that answer. If I were to summarize it, I'd say you get better MCQs, you get better TBSs, and you get better features than you do anywhere else. Plus, on top of everything else, you get better value. So that's why you should choose UWorld, right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Kyle, I've got a question for you. Processing times have been extremely high due to the BEC rush in 2023. I've seen that happen. But now my question is, given that was because of the BEC rush, do you think in 2024 in January we'll go back to a point where we'll have the usual normal 4 to 6 week processing time for an evaluation? Will it come back to the regular time?
Yes, absolutely. So we saw some record numbers come through, starting with my area, because the international evaluation that converts the education happens first. So a lot of volume there. And then after that, we, pass them along so they can apply for the application with the CPA exam team for eligibility to get the notice of schedule. So we did have some increases with the processing time because of that volume, even though we did add more bodies and resources to that. But my unit right now is actually at about 5 weeks, and we should be going down by January to a 4-week processing time. So give it about a week or so once your documents arrive, and then another 3 to 4 weeks to complete that international evaluation, so you can then apply for the application for CPA exam. But yes, that should be happening.
Excellent. That's great news for a lot of people who were looking forward to getting their applications in January. That yes, things will be back to normal. It'll be a normal 4 to 6 week process, no more than that. Wonderful. That's excellent news. Thank you so much, Kyle. Joseph, I've got a question here. How far out is the next major content change?
Great question. The next content change would really be quite far out. We don't foresee any major content changes other than regularly scheduled updates for changes in auditing, accounting, taxation pronouncements. So we don't take changes to the exam lightly. And whenever we do change the exam, there's a significant due process and notice to candidates, to students, to educators. So, but that being said, we don't see big changes after evolution coming soon.
Excellent. So I can say at least for 2024, we're free from changes.
Oh, yeah. You'll be safe.
We'll be safe. That's excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. And Chris, this is the last question for the day. I mean, from our list at least. Students are often worried about which state board should they choose, and they, sometimes misunderstand that a state board might limit or affect their career prospects. My answer usually to this sort of a question is substantial equivalency. Would you care to explain what substantial equivalency is?
Yeah, I mean, substantial equivalency is in short is just the states' recognitions of other states certifying and licensing accountants. So there is another there's another aspect called mobility, which I don't get into too often, but generally speaking, if a candidate gets licensed in a certain state, they are, after a period of time, able to transfer to another preferred state to practice in using substantial equivalency protocols. However, you would also potentially be able to practice in another state using mobility. And Kyle, do you mind just adding a point or two to that question? Because I think you can get a little deeper into the weeds on that.
Yeah, once you're a licensed CPA, a lot of states actually have, to go a little farther, reciprocity. So you could transfer your license and not have to go through the same hoops as a first-time candidate applying for a license if you've already obtained a license in one state and practiced for a certain amount of time. That's usually the easiest. But the jurisdiction choice is important because especially a lot of your candidates or students may just work in India, and you want to have a state that is not going to require a social security number for a CPA license, because there are a lot that don't require it for exam, but then they will require it for license. And obviously don't have a residency requirement. At that point, since all states are considered substantially equivalent, you're taking the same uniform CPA exam, you're getting the same CPA license. It's just regulated by whatever state board. It won't, if you're staying in India, I don't think you would have a preference as long as you can get in, not have a SSN number affected, and obtain the CPA license. Now, if you're coming to the US and you're going to work in an office in a certain state, that's where you may want to explore mobility options or transferring by reciprocity at that time.
Correct. So in essence, firstly, if you're working in India, you don't have to be so worried about which state's license do you actually get. For you, the focus has to be on getting a license rather than which state. But then again, if you're moving to the US, if you're moving to the US, then in that case, you may want to figure out which state you're going to, and you may want to figure out if you need that state's license. If you do, then there are options through mobility and substantial equivalency. Is that right? Is that a gist of it?
That's correct.
Excellent. Thank you so much, my fellow guests who've come and given us so much wisdom. Thank you so much for that. We are officially at the end of all the questions that we wanted to ask. Now I'm opening up to the audience for any questions that they may have. I've already gotten more than a few responses in the chats. And if anybody's got any questions, feel free to put it there. I may not be able to accommodate every question, but I'll try and pick up the best ones and I'll get the speakers to answer for it.
And let me add one thing to some transition relief that's happening that all jurisdictions approved. So if you're already in the CPA pipeline and let's say you passed one or two sections, let's say it was November of 2022, it doesn't matter. As long as you have a valid CPA exam section passed as of January 1st, then that gets automatically extended the 18 months to June of 2025. All the states have agreed to that. That's part of that transition relief happening. So if you're already in the pipeline, you have a valid CPA exam section you passed, starting January 1st, if you still have that credit, it gets extended until June 2025. So just wanted to add that as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Also, this is to my folks back here, Himanshu, Mohan. There are actually chats that Kyle and Chris have put in that have a lot of good information. Could we just forward that to all the students, because this is only reaching the hosts and panelists, but these chats are important. Okay, with that being said, I had a question here. Deepika has a question. She says, hi, can you please emphasize if licensing helps in India? Any speaker is welcome to give the answer on this. Anybody can give an answer. These guys want to know if it's even needed to get a license. Should I get a license? Why should I? If I just cleared 4 exams, isn't that good enough?
Let me and Joseph chime in on that, but you are not a US CPA unless you obtain the license. So that's the end goal. You can't call yourself a US CPA, or else there could be trouble that comes along with that. Now, obviously, you can say that you've passed the US CPA exam, but that's not the same as being a CPA. And so, if Joe or you want to add anything to that part, because we get that a lot being with NASBA, AICPA, and the boards.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kyle. Licensure is different than passing the exam. So completing all of the education, experience, exam, and sometimes ethics requirements are absolutely key to make sure that potential employers know that you have gone through the entire process.
Not to mention that if you sit for an exam in an international location, those exam results are only good for a fixed period of time. I believe they're good for 3 years.
3 years in India, correct? Correct.
So unless you're flying to the United States and sitting for the exam domestically, if you choose to go that route, there is a benefit to that because those exam results never expire.
Yeah.
So you'd be able to convert it to licensure if you flew to the US or Canada and sat for it domestically. However,
That'll be very expensive though, Chris. For an India candidate to fly 4 times to the US to get 4 exams.
that's the only way that you can get away from having your exam results expire.
Without having to apply a license. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. That was, I think, pretty clear. I have another question here which says, can I send one transcript in the form of an email and another transcript in the form of mail? Is that possible?
Absolutely. Yeah. Chris gets this quite a bit too, but yeah, they don't all have to come the same way. If you can get one school to email it, and then you get another school to mail it, and then let's say you have a third school and they email it, that's fine. We'll match it all to your application. Those are all official methods, and we will accept them mixed match like that, I guess, if you will say.
Okay.
And on that note, Rohan, education that is completed in the United States or at a United States school internationally doesn't need to be evaluated. So when you're on the CPA portal, there'll be an additional area to put added education. That's where you would put in, if you, for example, took a University of Northern Alabama accounting completion course, that would not be evaluated. It would just need to be sent directly to the state board. They would add it to your evaluation.
Okay, sounds fair. So if you get a US degree, you don't need to get it evaluated. Evaluations are needed only because you have a foreign qualification and it needs to be converted to credits. Makes sense. Okay, with that being said, I've got a question from one of my older students. She's asking, I've got the old books, I've got the old material. Shubir, I think this is for you. I've got the old materials. Do I need to buy the new UWorld sets or will I be given access? Will I be given access via EduMont? So she's an old student here. She's already purchased Wiley with us in the past. Now she's asking about a move over.
So students will get upgraded to the new 2024 UWorld materials. We may require a copy of the NTS, these requests come to you typically, Rohan, you sort of validate it and send it to us. No student will be left, without having, the updated materials if they still have an exam section to pass. So they don't need to worry about that.
Yeah. So guys, don't worry. We do keep our promises. We weren't just saying it. We meant it. Okay, with that being said, Chavi has a question ahead. That's a good question as well. I think this one could be for Kyle or Joseph, either of you. The question says, can we start our careers, can we start a job essentially after having passed all 4 CPA exams with 120 credits while we work our way to getting a license?
Yeah, people in the US do that. You're not getting any credit from your employer toward the academic credits needed for the 150. It could potentially count for the work experience that's required for license if it's doing accounting work. But yeah, there's no rule to say you can't do that. I know that just adds a little more to your plate, but people have to earn money. So it definitely happens.
Yeah. So essentially, yes, Chavi, the answer is you can actually start your employment with your 4 exams cleared. You'll be considered semi-qualified or somewhat qualified. But to be calling yourself a CPA, you need to have a license. And that is a necessity. which is why I keep telling all my students, you know, you need to have a license to get the full benefit of your CPA degree or your CPA qualification. Pratiksha has a question as well, which is interesting. Says, can I give a couple of my exams in the US and then a couple of them in India? Can I have that sort of a geographical split in where I give my exams?
Yeah, great. I just actually started to type something on that. Definitely. So each section requires its own NTS now. So once you obtain the NTS, if you want to test in India, there's an additional step where you have to pay the international testing fee through your CPA portal. So if you know you're going to take that CPA exam section in India, you pay the extra fee. When you apply for the other section, you get a new NTS. And if you know you're going to be in the US during that time, just don't pay that extra fee and you'll be able to test in the US or Canada with that NTS.
So essentially every NTS is, you know, active for USA. And then we additionally pay an international testing fee on top of it, which allows us to access other geographies outside the US. That's how that moves. Okay, cool. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kyle. We've got somebody asking a question. Dipankar, I think that's Dipankar Gandhi, one of my older students, is asking, any speaker would like to hear, recommend a course that somebody can do if they have only 120 credits and they need their 150.
So I think, I don't know who that, but EduMont may have some bridge programs. That's the term I always hear is bridge programs. From my end, with NASBA or even AICPA or even Chris with CPA eligible, I don't think we usually don't recommend specific courses, but if you guys have a tie-in, we just need to make sure that the school is properly accredited in India. Like we see a lot with the UGC, even AICTE, they have that accreditation. We're going to evaluate it. So it's really up to your personal preference what program you pursue to level up those credits.
Right, absolutely. So we do actually recommend AIMA. I think Chris was about to talk about it. Go ahead, Chris. Feel free to do that.
I just think AIMA is a solid program. It has everything that you need from an accounting perspective, and it's affordable for Indian students. We also have a partner in UNA, but the fees are more American oriented. They're about 550 USD per course.
Yeah. So guys, when he says per course, he means per subject. So it can get expensive. But then again, if you're somebody who's just if you're somebody who's just got 1 credit short, or you just need 1 course, then you might have a benefit in the UNA course, where you could save yourself a whole year of doing an MCOM, and just straight away you could go ahead with 1 course, which is an open course. Do that, and you get the credits transferred, and no evaluation needed because it's an American course. So that's some of the options right there. Do we have anything else? I see Hanit is adding a few things in there as to what all is recommended.
Harneet is my team lead at NASBA. So she is actually from Pune, and she specializes in the Indian education system for me and helps with a lot of questions like this. So thank you, Harneet, for helping to answer.
And hey, hi Harneet, thank you so much for being here. Please.
Go ahead.
So Harneet, please, you can have a few words, please. Go ahead.
No, I'm good. I'm working with NASBA for past 6 years, and my strength is India evaluations.
Yeah. Can I tell you something, Anit? You helped my wife with her evaluation.
Oh, awesome. You see my signature.
I've heard about you. I've known about you for a while. It's good to finally be able to meet you because you're sort of close to home.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I think we've covered most of the questions we had. Thank you so much to the guest speakers for coming up, giving us your time. And I hope the viewers who are watching this at home are certainly getting more clarity and are feeling more confident about their CPA preps. With that being said, if you have any more questions, anything else you guys want to find out, feel free to reach out to our team. They'll be happy to answer all your questions. With that being said, thank you. Bye. Good night. Good day. Whatever it is for you.